A young boy reluctantly sells his only pet puppy at a flea market to help pay for his mum's chemotherapy. As he fights back tears, a passing billionaire CEO notices the heartbreaking scene and steps in with a gesture that leaves the boy utterly speechless and changes everything. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear it. And if you're enjoying the content, give the video a like to help support the channel. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Noah had been up since 5, which wasn't unusual. He liked the quiet before the world stretched awake, before the buses groaned, the neighbours argued, and his mum started pretending everything was fine again. He moved quickly, already dressed, already packed. His backpack bulged with things he thought might help. The old blanket Rusty loved, a cracked food bowl, a leash he'd tried to stitch back together with fishing line. The puppy bounced around his feet, oblivious, tail wagging at everything that moved, especially socks. Jenna didn't stir as he tiptoed past her bedroom. She'd had another rough night. Her voice had gone hoarse from arguing on the phone with the insurance company. Noah had listened from the hallway, squeezing a baseball until it hurt. The words he'd heard were ones she never meant him to. Things like denied again, next session delayed, no other options. She'd ended the call with a bitter laugh, then gone silent for a long time. He couldn't fix cancer, but he could try to fix something else. The flea market opened at 8, but Noah was there early, wheeling in a borrowed folding table and carrying a cardboard sign he'd made the night before. Puppy gear, bargain treasures. He set up under a crooked tent between a woman selling haunted-looking dolls and a guy with a box full of tangled phone chargers. Rusty flopped onto the blanket like it was just another adventure. Noah gave him a treat, then taped up a second, smaller sign under the table, facing away from the main walkway. It just said, 40, puppy, friendly, must love socks. For a while, things were slow. A couple of early risers stopped by to admire the leash or ask if the bowl was microwave safe. Noah smiled politely, told a few jokes, even helped untangle someone's kite string. He knew how to stay cheerful. It was kind of his thing. His teachers always said he had a good attitude despite circumstances, which felt like a weird compliment. Still, he leaned into it. People liked jokes. It made them spend more. "Is that a real Hungarian sockhound?" asked an older woman in a wide-brimmed hat who smelled like cinnamon. Noah blinked. "Sure. He even speaks 2 languages, bark and louder bark." She giggled, then tried to buy Rusty's collar without the dog. When he declined, she muttered something about wasting her morning and moved on. By noon, the sun was baking the parking lot. Rusty panted beside him, tongue flopped out like a cartoon. Noah shared the last of his water, feeling the weight of the morning settle on his shoulders. Still no serious offers. One guy had offered $20 for the mutt, but walked away when Noah didn't even answer. He didn't want someone who just wanted a dog. He wanted someone who would deserve Rusty. Someone good. The idea of selling him had seemed simple in theory. In practice, every time someone paused, Noah's chest got tight. He kept picturing Rusty at home, climbing into his bed like he always did, dragging a sock across the hall. How could he explain it to him? "Sorry, buddy, I had to pick between you and Mom." By late afternoon, a woman with 3 kids and a minivan full of groceries stopped by. Her daughter, maybe 7, crouched and gently stroked Rusty's ear. He leaned into her, tail thumping lazily. The mum asked the price, then asked again, more seriously. Noah's voice shook a little when he answered. $40, that's all. He didn't want to go higher. He wanted someone who could still afford dog food after. The woman nodded, looked at her kids, then opened her purse. Noah felt like he was underwater. He packed up the food bowl, handed over the leash, and then, slowly, gathered Rusty into his arms. He pressed his face into the puppy's fur one last time. "Be good," he whispered. "Steal only clean socks, okay?" He tried not to watch as they walked away. He stared at the table instead, at the empty bowl and the dent in the blanket. The market was quieter now, some vendors already packing up. The sun had shifted low, casting long shadows between tents. He wiped at his face without thinking, blinking fast. "Rough day?" a voice asked nearby. Noah looked up, startled. A man in jeans and a t-shirt stood by the booth, sunglasses pushed up on his head, hands in his pockets. He looked like someone who belonged more in a tech commercial than at a flea market, tall, confident, but not in a loud way. His shirt had some kind of obscure space mission logo on it. Noah nodded once, trying to reassemble his polite vendor face. All good. Closing up soon. The man glanced at the table, then at the now empty patch where Rusty had been. "Selling anything else?" "Nope, just memories," Noah said, a little too sharp. The man tilted his head. "That your puppy?" "Was," Noah replied. Then added, because it felt necessary, "My mom's sick. Real sick. Insurance won't help anymore." I didn't know what else to do. There was a long pause. The man didn't say anything at first, just looked down the walkway where the van had disappeared. Then he asked, almost carefully, "What's your name?" "Noah." "Well, Noah," the man said, "I think you're braver than most people I know." Noah frowned. "It doesn't feel brave. It just feels awful." "Most brave things do," the man said quietly. He looked back at the table. "Would you mind telling me where that puppy's going?" Not trying to be weird, just curious. Noah shrugged. "Lady with a minivan. I don't know. She seemed okay." The man seemed to consider that, then pulled something from his wallet. "I know you're done for the day, but would you take a donation to the cause?" He held out a $100 bill. Noah blinked. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity. It's payment for the lesson. You reminded me what it means to care about something more than yourself." Noah hesitated, then took the bill, folding it carefully and slipping it into his backpack. "Thanks." The man smiled. "You hungry?" "A little," Noah admitted. "Come on, my driver's got snacks." "Wait, you have a driver?" "Unfortunately," the man muttered, adjusting his sunglasses as they walked toward the parking lot. "It's part of the costume." "What costume?" The man paused at the curb, where a sleek black car waited. "Romeo Price," he said, offering a hand. "Technically, I'm a billionaire, but don't hold it against me." Noah stared, hand halfway to shaking. "You're that Romeo Price?" "The one with the terrible coffee app and a weird face on bus ads." "Yep." Noah shook his head slowly. "I thought you'd be taller." Romeo grinned. "Everyone says that." And just like that, the story began to turn. The inside of the car smelled like leather and something citrusy, and the seats were so soft they made Noah feel like he was sinking into a couch disguised as transportation. It was nothing like the bus rides he usually took with his mom to the clinic. No sticky gum on the floors, no strangers arguing over headphones. This car hummed quietly, almost too smooth, like it was gliding instead of driving. Outside, the flea market was shrinking in the distance. Inside, Noah sat stiffly, backpack clutched to his chest, and Rusty curled up between his sneakers, occasionally letting out a whine that Noah swore was judgmental. Across from him, Romeo leaned against the door, glancing out the window more than at Noah, like he knew better than to talk too soon. The silence felt padded, not heavy, just waiting. It was finally broken by the driver, Doug, whose voice floated in from the front seat like he'd been narrating a documentary in his head the whole time. So, kid sells puppy. Billionaire buys puppy. Kid comes along. Is this a Hallmark movie, or am I missing something? Noah didn't laugh, but his mouth twitched slightly. Romeo rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly sheepish. We're making it up as we go. Doug nodded. Fair enough. They passed a gas station, a row of fast food places, a block of houses with cracked sidewalks and basketball hoops with no nets. Rusty sniffed the air, then sighed and curled tighter. Noah reached down and scratched behind his ear. The cardboard box the woman had carried him away in was long gone, and Romeo hadn't said what he planned to do next, which only made things feel weirder. So, Romeo said at last, as if bracing for rejection, what do you think about helping Rusty settle in? Maybe spend a few hours making sure he doesn't chew my furniture or fall in the pool? Noah glanced up. You have a pool? Kind of. It's technically a water feature that costs too much and makes my accountant mad. Noah looked back down. Rusty doesn't like water. Unless it's from a toilet. Then he's a fan. Well, Romeo said, I guess we'll keep the lid down. They hit a red light. A woman walked past the crosswalk with 2 kids and a balloon animal that was halfway deflated. One of the kids pointed at the car like it was a spaceship. Noah kept his face toward the window but finally said, I didn't want to sell him. He's all I have that's mine. Romeo nodded slowly. Then why do it? Because life's not fair, Noah muttered. But chemo bills still show up. You either find a way or you don't. I found a way. That hit Romeo harder than he expected. He looked away for a second, then back at the boy sitting with his knees drawn up, arms wrapped around his backpack like a shield. The words weren't self-pitying. They were matter-of-fact, like someone who'd learned too early not to expect anything extra from the world. I'm not trying to be a hero here, Romeo said. You're the one who made the hard call. I just walked by. Noah didn't answer. Doug's voice chimed in again. We're 10 minutes out. You want me to stop for snacks? Or are we pretending we have grapes and water bottles waiting in crystal bowls? Romeo leaned forward. We got anything kid-friendly in the pantry? Doug snorted. Unless he's into energy bars and ghost pepper almonds, I'd say no. Noah glanced between them. You eat ghost pepper almonds? I don't, Romeo said quickly. They were a gift from someone I don't like. Doug added, he tried one once. We had to turn the AC down to 60. The corners of Noah's mouth lifted again, and for the first time since the woman had taken Rusty, he laughed, quiet and short, but real. Romeo heard it and relaxed slightly. The building they pulled up to didn't look like much from the outside. Glass, steel, a row of identical trees out front, like they'd been stamped there by a designer. But when they reached the top floor, Noah's jaw twitched. The penthouse was huge. Open space, big windows, a kitchen that looked more like a display. Everything sleek, everything quiet, like no one really lived there. This place is way too clean, Noah muttered as they stepped inside. Rusty perked up, then immediately sprinted toward the far wall and slid across the polished floor into a potted plant. Soil scattered, leaves trembled. So much for the clean part, Romeo said. Guess he's adjusting fast. Rusty trotted back proudly, with a leaf in his mouth. Doug, watching from the elevator, gave a mock salute. I'll be in the car. Text if the dog eats the art. Once the door closed behind him, Noah took a few steps in, scanning everything. You live here alone? Yep. No butler? Nope. Robot? Romeo hesitated. Technically, there's an automated vacuum named Lester, but he's useless. Noah wandered into the kitchen and opened a cabinet. You don't even have cereal. I have almond flour. That's a crime. Romeo watched him move around, slowly settling. It reminded him of how he used to feel walking into other people's houses as a kid, cautious, curious, pretending not to care. He walked over to the couch and sat, leaving plenty of space between them. Rusty jumped up and immediately began sniffing everything like he owned it. So, Romeo said eventually, "What do you do for fun, besides emotionally wreck wealthy strangers?" Noah shrugged. "I fix broken toys, take stuff apart, read comics." "You fix things?" "Yeah. My mum says if I had access to a soldering iron, I'd have built a microwave by now. Remind me not to give you access to my espresso machine." Noah let out a tired breath. "I didn't mean to make it weird. With the dog—" "You didn't," Romeo said. "You made it honest." They sat for a while, the room quiet, except for the occasional sound of Rusty's nails on the floor. Eventually, Noah curled up on one end of the couch, half buried in a throw blanket that probably cost more than his entire flea market booth. He closed his eyes, then opened them again. "Thanks for not making me feel like a project." Romeo looked over at him. "You're not. You're a person. Some people don't get that. Some people are wrong." The kid nodded, already drifting. Rusty jumped up and snuggled in beside him. Romeo pulled out his phone, scrolled to the donation page Jenna had posted weeks ago, and read the numbers again. Still far from the goal. No updates in days. He tapped the screen, entered an amount, and hit confirm. No name. Just a note, for the ones who fix what's broken. He looked back at the couch, where Noah was now fast asleep. Rusty's tail thumped once, slow and content. The place didn't feel quite so empty anymore. Noah didn't remember falling asleep, only waking up to the smell of something burnt and a faint beeping sound that didn't stop until Romeo muttered something at the ceiling. The lights dimmed, the beeping cut out, and a breeze from the air system stirred the edge of the blanket Noah was curled up in. Rusty was snoring at his feet, completely unbothered. The whole apartment was quiet, city lights stretching beyond the glass wall like stars spilled over asphalt. "Popcorn emergency," Romeo said, walking past the couch with a bowl of slightly charred kernels. "Turns out, I can build an app that predicts rainfall in Kuala Lumpur, but I still can't use a microwave without supervision." Noah sat up slowly, rubbing his face. "You burn popcorn?" "Spectacularly. I thought rich people had someone who just made snacks on command." Romeo handed him the bowl and sat on the other end of the couch. "We do. His name is Lester. He's a robot. He only vacuums." From across the room, Lester, a squat white disc with LED eyes, bumped gently into a chair leg and reversed course without purpose. The place was too clean. It didn't feel lived in. It felt staged, like a magazine page. Minimalist everything, black and white furniture, high-end speakers hidden in the walls. A few abstract paintings, maybe one actual photo in a frame tucked near the hallway. It was the kind of place you'd expect someone to brag about, but Romeo hadn't. He seemed mildly embarrassed by it, if anything. Noah wandered to the bathroom, where he stared for a good minute at what looked like a gilded toilet. "Is that real gold?" Romeo, standing in the hall, replied, "I don't know. My interior designer said it would make a statement." "It does," Noah said. "It says, 'I'm a toilet, but I'm also trying too hard.'" He poked around a bit longer, discovered the bidet, pressed a button, and yelped when a stream of water shot up. "Is this a face sprayer for your butt?" he called. Romeo laughed from the kitchen. "Pretty much." "Gross." They ended up back in the living room, watching a movie Doug had recommended, something old and funny, black and white, with quick dialogue and ridiculous plot twists. Doug showed up halfway through, still in his driver uniform, but holding a bag of fast food and a tired grin. He dropped onto the recliner like someone who'd had enough of traffic and billionaires for one day. Rusty tore through the penthouse as if he'd been hired to test its durability. He peed on an imported rug in the hallway and knocked over a sculpture shaped like a giant chrome spoon. Noah tried to stop him, but Romeo waved him off. Honestly, it's the most personality this place has had in a while. Doug offered Rusty half a fry, which was accepted with great enthusiasm and mild drool. The three of them ate on the couch, popcorn, fries, and half-watched scenes. At some point, Noah fell asleep again, curled up with Rusty, one hand still clutching a greasy napkin. Romeo didn't wake him. He just lowered the volume, cleaned up the mess, and let the night roll over them. Later, with the apartment finally quiet and Doug gone for the night, Romeo sat at the kitchen island, scrolling through his phone. He found Jenna's page easily. The photo at the top showed her holding Noah as a baby, both of them beaming. The description was matter-of-fact, too proud to beg, too desperate not to ask. Insurance denied coverage for the new treatment plan. Out-of-pocket costs had stacked up. The donations had slowed. He didn't hesitate this time. He clicked through, entered the amount, and sent it anonymously. It wouldn't fix everything, but it would buy time. Maybe that was enough for now. The next morning, Romeo made coffee badly and fumbled with a fruit smoothie that exploded halfway through blending. Noah wandered in with bedhead and a look of cautious confusion. "You tried to cook, didn't you?" "Smoothie. I thought I was safe." "Looks like someone juiced a garden hose." They cleaned it together, Romeo handing Noah a dish rag and pretending he knew what he was doing. Rusty barked at the mess, as if blaming the blender. By the time Doug arrived, the apartment looked slightly less sterile. A sock was in the middle of the hallway. A trail of paw prints stained the floor. Something about the space felt looser. Lived in. "You ready to head back?" Romeo asked, as Noah stuffed his backpack. Noah hesitated. "Am I allowed to take Rusty?" "Well, technically, he belongs to me now." Noah's face fell fast, like a trapdoor dropping. "Yeah, right." Romeo reached down and clipped the leash to Rusty's collar. "But I think he prefers you, so maybe he should stay with his favorite person." Noah stared. "Wait, are you giving him back?" "Consider it a permanent loan, with conditions." "What kind of conditions?" "You keep him happy, and you help me out from time to time. Tech stuff. Feedback. You'd be surprised how bad my team is at knowing what kids actually like." Noah squinted at him. "You want to hire me? Junior consultant, flexible hours, unlimited snacks." Noah's lips twitched. "Do I get a nameplate?" Romeo opened the front door. "I'll get you one that lights up." Doug honked from the car. They headed down together, Rusty trotting beside them, leash in Noah's hand, tail wagging like the last 24 hours had never happened. On the ride back, Noah leaned against the window, one arm draped over Rusty. The city buzzed past, messy and loud again. Romeo checked his watch once, then didn't look again. Doug made small talk about baseball and traffic and how badly he needed a vacation. When they pulled up to Noah's apartment complex, the contrast was jarring. Brick, peeling paint, a stairwell with one flickering light. Romeo didn't say anything. He just got out and opened the door. Noah stood there for a second, backpack over one shoulder, Rusty sitting at his feet. "Thanks for letting me stay," he said. "Thanks for the popcorn critique," Romeo replied. "And the toilet review." Noah gave a small grin. "Seriously, grossly unnecessary. I'll keep that in mind. They didn't hug. It wasn't that kind of moment. But something passed between them anyway, an understanding that this wasn't a one-time thing. As Noah started up the stairs, Rusty bounded ahead. Halfway up, he paused and looked back. So did Noah. I guess I'll see you at work. You'd better, Romeo said. The door shut behind them, and Romeo stood there a moment longer than necessary. Then he turned back to the car, already wondering how to explain to his board that his best new hire was 10 years old and had just called his interior design taste tragic. Noah's first day as a junior vibe consultant started with a name badge made from masking tape and a Sharpie. Romeo stuck it onto Noah's hoodie like it was a serious corporate matter and said, "This makes it official. You're now in charge of making my app suck less." Noah looked at the badge, then at Romeo, and said, "This is either child labor or the start of a tech empire. Let's find out." They were sitting in one of Romeo's company conference rooms, which looked like someone had told an architect to imagine a spaceship had a coffee addiction. Everything was white, angular, and just a little too shiny. Rusty was under the table, inside a zip-up dog backpack with mesh windows, which Noah had insisted was essential for stealth operations. So far, no one had noticed, or at least no one had said anything. Romeo pulled up the current version of the charity app they were trying to relaunch. It was sleek, full of neutral colors and polite icons, a clean interface. It was also, according to Romeo, getting absolutely no love from users under 25. Noah took one look at the home screen and squinted. Why does it look like my dentist made this if he were bad at computers? Romeo raised an eyebrow. You always this subtle? Noah nodded, only on weekends. They spent the next hour tearing the app apart, laughing at design choices and suggesting improvements that ranged from actually useful to wildly impractical. At one point, Noah pitched a donation feature called Give and Roast, where users could donate $5 and leave a sarcastic message about the outdated font choices. Romeo didn't reject it immediately. By the time Doug popped his head in to say Romeo's next meeting was delayed, they had a list of notes longer than the actual app description on the store. After that, their meetings became regular, twice a week after school, sometimes at Romeo's office, sometimes at weird cafes Noah liked. One had mismatched chairs and a barista who wore suspenders for no reason. Another had a jukebox that only played jazz covers of video game themes. They'd sit in a booth, Noah sipping chocolate milk with a straw, Romeo poking at his laptop, while Rusty dozed in his lap or tried to charm other customers into sharing food. At the office, Noah became a minor celebrity. The receptionist, Tonya, started keeping extra granola bars in her drawer, just in case the consultant needs to refuel. The head of design asked Noah for meme references to use in ad copy. A programmer started wearing a sticker on his laptop that read, "Approved by Vibe Control." Romeo didn't mind the attention Noah got. In fact, he found himself looking forward to those afternoons more than anything else. It was a break from people who used jargon and acted like every decision was a war. Noah had questions, jokes, blunt opinions, and absolutely no agenda. He said what he thought. He didn't care about stock prices. And he somehow made things feel lighter, even when nothing had changed. One Tuesday, while they were reviewing a user flow, Noah paused mid-sentence and asked, "Hey, do you think it's weird someone gave my mom $5,000 anonymously?" Romeo blinked. Why do you ask?" Because she was about to cancel a treatment session, and then boom, full balance covered, no note, no message, just poof, money. Romeo pretended to think. Maybe someone saw her fundraising page. Yeah, but it was stuck at 680 for like 3 weeks, and then suddenly, bam, paid in full. That's not random internet kindness. That's spy behavior. Spy behavior? Noah nodded seriously. My current theory is a secret Canadian philanthropist, possibly named Harold. Romeo choked on his coffee. Harold? Yeah. He's retired. Lives in the Yukon. Feels guilty about a failed marriage and just wants to make things right. You're very detailed. I have a lot of time on the bus. Romeo changed the subject, but Noah kept speculating for the next 2 weeks. Every new idea was more ridiculous than the last. A time traveler from the future, a guilt-ridden ice cream magnate, a hacker monk. Romeo kept his face neutral each time, pretending to be surprised while secretly regretting not having at least written a note when he made the donation. Meanwhile, Jenna had started to notice changes, not just in Noah's mood, which was brighter, but in his energy. He had new phrases like product pivot and brand tone, and seemed to know more about mobile interfaces than most adults. She was curious, but cautious. She asked where he went after school. He said, "My job," like it was obvious. When she pressed for details, he waved it off with, "You'll like him. He's weird, but in a good way." The treatments were working slowly. Jenna still had bad days, and she still didn't like asking for help. But the crushing pressure around bills had eased, and she couldn't ignore the fact that someone with serious money, had given her family breathing room. She'd gone over the donor information 4 times. Nothing but a confirmation email. No name, no message. She brought it up one night over dinner, while Noah was feeding Rusty from the table. "You know anything about the donor?" she asked casually. Noah shrugged. "Only that I'm 90% sure he has a jet." Jenna narrowed her eyes. "That doesn't answer my question." "It answers part of it." She leaned back. "Okay, then I want to meet your mystery boss. Properly." "You sure?" Noah asked. "Because he's not super normal. He burned popcorn once and owns a vacuum that can probably vote." Jenna gave him a look. Noah sighed dramatically. "Fine, but you have to be cool about it." "Define cool." "No yelling. No asking if he's famous. And definitely no jokes about golden toilets." Jenna laughed, despite herself. "What kind of place does this man live in?" "You'll see." She shook her head, but something softened in her expression. She didn't say it, but part of her was relieved. This stranger, whoever he was, had brought Noah back to life in a way she hadn't seen in months. If her son trusted him, she was willing to give the benefit of the doubt. Noah texted Romeo later that night with a simple message. "Mom wants to meet you. Be prepared." Romeo stared at the screen for a long moment before typing back. "Tell her I'm better with PowerPoints than parents, but I'll try." He didn't say it out loud, but he already knew meeting Jenna wasn't going to be just another introduction. It was going to change everything. Romeo stood outside the apartment building with a paper bag of takeout in one hand and a very subtle sense of dread in the other. He'd faced angry investors, press ambushes, and once, a live coding demo that went so wrong it trended on Twitter. But this felt different. Jenna wasn't an audience or a business problem to solve. She was Noah's mother. And Noah had made it clear this wasn't a casual introduction. The door opened before he knocked. Noah stood there with Rusty tucked under one arm and an exaggerated expression of concern on his face. "You ready?" "For what?" Romeo asked, stepping inside. "For the ultimate test," Mom in interrogation mode. Romeo held up the food. "At least I brought a peace offering." Noah inspected the bag. "Is that the dumplings she likes from the place with the weird koi pond?" I'm not stupid. Time will tell, Noah muttered, then turned and yelled, Mom, he's here, and he brought carbs. Jenna appeared from the kitchen, drying her hands on a dish towel. She was wearing jeans and a faded t-shirt that read Nope in block letters. Her hair was pulled back, and she looked tired in a way that said she was still standing out of sheer spite. So, she said, arms crossed, you're Romeo. Romeo extended the takeout. And you're Jenna. I've heard good things. Also, I brought shrimp dumplings and sesame noodles. She took the bag, but didn't smile. Bribery. Classic move. Did it work? That depends. You poisoning us? Not intentionally. They moved to the kitchen, which was small but clean, the kind of space where everything had been repurposed or repaired at least twice. Romeo offered to help set the table and was promptly handed a stack of mismatched plates. Noah disappeared to his room, loudly claiming he was letting the grown-ups bond or whatever. Jenna poured water into glasses while Romeo set forks. She watched him with the wariness of someone used to things going sideways. So, what exactly do you do with my son? Well, Romeo said, mostly I exploit his natural talent for sarcasm and his ability to spot bad user interfaces. Nice. And you pay him for that? Technically, in food and digital stickers. Jenna raised an eyebrow. I also wire him $50 every other week. He said he'd only agree if it came with a ridiculous job title. Let me guess, junior vibe consultant? He insisted. They sat down, the food between them steaming gently. Jenna served herself, but didn't eat right away. Listen, she said, I'm not ungrateful. Noah's been lighter lately, happier. That's not nothing. But I've got to ask, why are you doing this? What's the angle? Romeo paused. There's no angle. I walked by a flea market and saw a kid trying to sell his best friend so he could afford medicine for his mom. That stuck with me. Jenna nodded slowly. So, what? Guilt? Maybe, at first. But then he made fun of my toilet and told me my app looked like homework, and I realized he wasn't just smart, he was right. She cracked a reluctant smile. He does have a way of cutting through. I don't think he sees himself as a kid with a hard life. He just sees what needs to be done, and he does it. Jenna leaned back, still watching him. That's the part that scares me sometimes. He shouldn't have to be that grown up. I agree, Romeo said. So maybe if someone else can shoulder a little of it, that's not the worst thing. They ate in silence for a bit. The dumplings were surprisingly good. Eventually, Jenna sighed. I Googled you. I assumed. You've got a complicated track record. Big money, big headlines. Also, a lawsuit involving a smart toaster. Still pending. And you're mid-divorce. Also still pending. She shook her head. So what, you're just hanging out with my kid now? I'm trying to do something useful with what I've got. That started with a puppy and a donation. It's more now, but I get it. You don't owe me trust. Good, Jenna said, standing up. Because I'm not handing it out like free samples. Romeo stood too. Fair enough. Noah popped back in then, Rusty trailing behind him with a sock in his mouth. This is going better than I thought. No one's thrown anything yet. Jenna looked at him. We're warming up. Noah shrugged. Cool. I'll get the Nerf guns ready. That night, after Romeo left, Jenna stared at the door for a long time before finally locking it. She didn't say anything about him to Noah, just asked if he'd finished his math homework and if Rusty had eaten. But something had shifted. Not trust. Not yet. Just the beginning of a second look. Over the next few weeks, Romeo kept showing up. Sometimes with takeout, sometimes with board games. Once with a stack of science magazines he thought Noah would like. He helped with school projects, cheered at a middle school soccer game, and once fixed the apartment's Wi-Fi router using a paperclip and mild cursing. Jenna didn't ask him to, he just did it. She tried to keep her distance, but the apartment was small, and he was patient. They ended up sitting on the fire escape one night, splitting a sleeve of cookies, watching the lights from downtown flicker. He didn't ask personal questions, just listened when she complained about the insurance company or the neighbor who always stole her laundry machine slot. He made her laugh twice. She didn't expect that, and she hated how much she noticed. Doug, ever observant, brought it up while driving Romeo back from one visit. "You're in love with a woman who owns 3 mugs and a fridge full of off-brand orange juice." "I am not," Romeo replied too quickly. Doug nodded slowly. "You sure?" "Pretty sure. You brought her a vacuum last week. Her old one was broken." "You bought a vacuum? For a woman? You're doomed." Romeo didn't respond. He looked out the window, trying not to smile. At home, Jenna stood at the sink, looking at the new vacuum still in the box. She hadn't opened it yet. She wasn't sure what it meant, but she also hadn't thrown it away. And upstairs, Noah added a new post-it to his bedroom wall, where he was tracking his own secret theory. Probability Romeo ends up staying equals 64%, pending vacuum acceptance. Noah had never considered himself much of a romantic, but even he could tell something was shifting. The way Romeo lingered a little longer after dinner. The way his mum folded dish towels more carefully when she knew Romeo was coming by. The way Rusty acted like Romeo's lap was the natural end of every evening. It wasn't dramatic or obvious, but it was enough that Noah started keeping track on his wall of sticky notes with a fresh heading, Operation Mum plus Tech Guy equals success. Once he was sure there was something worth nudging, he launched his campaign with all the restraint of a sugar-high raccoon. First came the accidental movie nights. Noah would suggest a movie he claimed was a school assignment. Jenna would reluctantly agree, and just as she was figuring out how to stream it, Noah would casually text Romeo, "Emergency. We're watching a movie with subtitles. Save us." 20 minutes later, Romeo would arrive with snacks and some excuse about being in the neighborhood. Rusty would wag his tail like he'd been in on it the whole time. Then came the dinners. Noah burned 3 in 1 week. He claimed the oven was misbehaving and that he was experimenting with flavor smoke. Jenna was suspicious, but Romeo never seemed to mind. He'd show up with takeout and a joke about food safety regulations, and they'd all end up sitting around the tiny kitchen table with mismatched forks and a dog chewing socks underfoot. Noah even trained Rusty to whine pathetically every time Romeo stood to leave. It didn't take much effort. Rusty already hated goodbyes, but a few treats during practice sessions sealed the routine. Romeo would grab his keys, Rusty would whimper, and Noah would say, with innocent eyes, "I think he wants you to stay for dessert." Sometimes Romeo stayed, sometimes he didn't. But every time he left, Jenna would stand at the window longer than necessary, arms folded tight. Still, for all of Noah's meddling, something invisible hung between them. Jenna didn't lean in. She smiled, but not all the way. She was warmer than she'd been in months, but never quite relaxed. One night, after a long walk with Rusty and a detour for ice cream, she finally said what had been pressing at her chest for weeks. They were on the fire escape again, sitting on 2 old lawn chairs that Noah had rescued from someone's curb and declared, "Vintage." Romeo had just finished telling her about a failed product launch that ended with a pie chart printed upside down. Jenna laughed, but then her smile faded. "You know," she said quietly, "it's not that I don't see what's happening. I do. You're here, and you're kind, and you make my kid light up like it's summer again." Romeo looked over, but didn't interrupt. "But I've been in survival mode for so long," she said, staring out at the city. "Every time someone offered to help, it came with a deadline, or conditions, or disappointment. So now, when something good shows up, I can't tell if it's real or just another break waiting to happen." Romeo didn't say anything at first, just let the quiet sit with them. Then, softly, "I don't want to fix anything. I just like being here. That's it." She glanced at him. "Even if being here means microwave vegetables and a broken heater. Especially if it means that." That night, Jenna let him stay a little longer. They didn't touch, didn't even sit that close. But something softened. What none of them expected was the interference from Romeo's side of the world. He hadn't exactly hidden his schedule lately. Weekends in a modest apartment instead of on private jets, board meetings taken over Zoom from a cluttered table with a kid yelling in the background. For a while, he thought it didn't matter. The numbers were steady, his team was solid, but the murmurs started anyway. A major investor called during a lunch break and asked bluntly, "What's with the image change? You used to look like someone ready to eat the world. Now you look like someone who adopted a PTA." Romeo tried to laugh it off, but the pushback got louder. One board member asked if he was emotionally distracted. Another hinted that it might be time for him to refocus his priorities. One suggested a PR campaign to reposition him, fewer kid-related stories, more cutting-edge innovation. Jenna overheard part of one of those calls. She'd come into the apartment just as Romeo stepped onto the balcony with his phone, voice low and tense. She didn't catch everything, but she heard enough. "No, I haven't abandoned anything. No, this isn't some midlife detour. It's not a phase." When he came back inside, she was quiet. Too quiet. He didn't notice it at first. But over the next few days, her texts slowed down. Her smiles got shorter. She stopped inviting him up and started saying things like, "I've got a lot on my plate," or "It's probably better if we skip tonight." Noah noticed it too. Not right away, but eventually. He couldn't put his finger on it, but the energy had changed. Rusty seemed more restless. Jenna seemed more tired again, like she was slipping back into that version of herself who had stopped hoping for anything new. Romeo still came by, but not as often and not with the same ease. One evening, after Romeo left early and Jenna went to bed claiming she had a headache, Noah sat in his room with a notebook open in his lap. He stared at a blank page for a long time before finally writing a short, clumsy letter. "Dear Romeo, if you don't love my mom, that's okay. I get it. People fall in and out and whatever. But if you do love her and leave anyway, then I'm going to have to throw a sock at you, a used one. And maybe Rusty will help. He's pretty fast. Also, I think she's scared. I don't know how to fix that, but I know she doesn't want to be alone, even if she says she does. So don't listen to everything she says. Noah." He left the letter in Romeo's briefcase the next time he came over. He didn't mention it, just tucked it between some papers and let it wait. Romeo didn't find it until 3 days later at a board meeting. He opened his case in front of a room full of people in suits and caught a glimpse of Noah's sloppy handwriting. He closed the case, made an excuse, and left early. That night, he stood outside the apartment building again. No takeout this time. No grand gesture. Just him and a folded note in his pocket, wondering how to prove that he wasn't here to fix anything, just to stay. Romeo stood in the hallway with the folded letter still in his hand. He'd read it 3 times already, each word hitting differently than the last. It was simple, honest, and painfully accurate, in a way only Noah could manage. The part that stuck most wasn't the sock threat, though he had to admit that one stung a little. It was the line about Jenna being scared and about not listening to everything she said, because he had been listening too carefully. He'd taken her retreat as a sign to back off, to not make things harder. But the truth was, he'd backed off because he was scared too. Scared that pushing any harder would make her shut the door entirely. He knocked. It was late, and the hallway light flickered like it always did, and he expected no one to answer. But the door opened slowly, and Jenna stood there barefoot in a hoodie and pajama pants, like she hadn't been asleep, just waiting for something she hadn't been sure would come. "I found the letter," Romeo said. "He's got quite the way with words." Jenna stepped back without speaking, letting him in. The apartment smelled faintly of lavender soap and whatever Noah had attempted for dinner. Rusty barked once and trotted over, then flopped down at Romeo's feet like he'd been expecting him, too. They sat at the table, the quiet settling around them, heavy but not unfriendly. Romeo didn't bother warming up to it. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a printout of the donation confirmation. "I need to tell you something." Jenna looked at the paper, then back at him. "What is it?" "I'm the one who covered your treatment," he said. "Back when the fundraiser stalled. I didn't want to make a thing of it. I just did it." She didn't say anything at first, just stared at him, unreadable. Then she leaned back in the chair, arms crossed. "You didn't tell me. I didn't know how. You've been coming into my home, sitting at my table, talking to my son, and you didn't think to mention that you bankrolled my survival. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like?" Her voice didn't rise, but it sharpened. Romeo took a breath. "It was a moment. I saw the fundraiser, and I saw the numbers, and I didn't think, I just knew I could help, so I did. And then later, when things started changing between us, I thought maybe if I said something it would feel like a power thing, like I was trying to buy my way in, and I didn't want that. I just wanted to be around, without that hanging over us." Jenna's hands were in her lap now, still, tense. "You don't understand what it's like. Having to accept help when you've built your whole life around being the one who holds things together. It's not about pride, it's about survival." "I do understand," he said quietly. "Not exactly, but I know what it's like to be treated like a project, like something to fix. And I know what it's like to feel like if you let someone help, you're giving them a piece of your freedom. That was never my goal. I didn't want to fix you. I just didn't want to watch you drown when I had a lifeboat." She looked at him, finally, really looked at him. The edges of her expression softened just slightly, enough to let something else through, weariness maybe, or just the weight of having carried everything alone for too long. "I'm tired," she said, "of doing this by myself, of being the problem people try to solve." "You're not a problem," Romeo said. "You're just a person, one who's had to be strong longer than most. But strength doesn't mean you never let anyone in." She didn't respond right away. He could see the war behind her eyes, not anger, just years of needing to be careful with her trust, her time, her heart. He reached across the table and didn't touch her hand, just placed his near hers. "You don't have to say anything tonight. I just wanted to be honest. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to." That was when she started to cry. Not loud, not dramatically, just quietly. A few tears she tried to wipe away as quickly as they came. Romeo didn't move. He let her take her time. Rusty, unbothered by the weight of human emotions, leapt up suddenly and started licking both of their faces, tail wagging like he'd solved the world's biggest mystery. Jenna laughed through the tears, pushing him gently off her lap. Romeo chuckled, wiping his face with a napkin. Apparently, he forgives me, Romeo said. Jenna gave a tired laugh. He forgives everyone who smells like snacks. It was then that Noah walked in from the hallway, holding a bowl of cereal and looking mildly alarmed. He took one look at them, both red-eyed and mid-laugh, and said, "Is this a romantic moment, or do I need to turn on the fan again for dramatic ambience?" Jenna covered her face with her hands. Romeo nodded solemnly. "Fan? For sure." Noah shrugged and padded back toward his room. "I'll get the soundtrack ready too. Rusty, let's give them some privacy." Over the next few days, things settled. Not perfectly. There were awkward silences, long talks, small starts and restarts. But Romeo didn't pull back again. He showed up, and not just with food or jokes. He sat with Jenna when she was too tired to pretend she was fine. He helped Noah with homework without turning it into a production. He left space, and she slowly stepped into it. At the next board meeting, Romeo showed up in jeans and a plain sweater. No slides, no pitch, just a statement. "I'm stepping down, effective immediately." The silence that followed was long and stunned. "I've spent a decade chasing numbers, and it worked. I got everything I thought I wanted, but I missed what mattered, so now I'm building something else. A foundation focused on tech that actually helps people. No stock ticker, no glossy launch parties, just real tools for real problems. If you want to stay involved, great. If not, I understand." He left the meeting without taking questions. Doug was waiting downstairs, holding a cup of coffee and a knowing smirk. Did they cry? Only internally. Good man. Noah was the first person Romeo told, standing outside the apartment with a box of pastries and a lopsided grin. He handed over a small package wrapped in paper and duct tape. Inside was a mug. On one side it read, "Retired Rich Guy." On the other, in shaky Sharpie letters, "Now 20% nicer." Romeo laughed. 20%? "I didn't want to exaggerate," Noah said, "but I'm open to updates." Romeo raised the mug. "I'll earn the other 80. And inside, quietly, he hoped that with enough time and care, he just might. The sun had just started pouring in through the back windows when Noah crashed into the bedroom, holding a wrinkled navy blue tie and a grin that didn't bother with subtlety. Rusty followed close behind, tail wagging, like he was also in on the urgency. Romeo sat up, blinking at the light, still half dreaming and slightly sore from a night spent sleeping on a mattress too soft, thanks to Rusty claiming half his pillow. "You promised not to cry at the ceremony," Noah announced, tossing the tie on the bed. Romeo rubbed his eyes. "What ceremony?" Jenna appeared behind Noah, already in jeans and a tank top, her hair twisted up in a messy bun that somehow made her look more like herself than she ever had during the early days of treatment. "The one where I say, 'I love you' in front of 30 people, and your dog tries to eat the cake." Romeo blinked again. "That's today?" "Yup," Jenna said. "You've had it on your phone's calendar for months. It says, and I quote, 'Do not schedule meetings or run away.'" "Ah, right." Romeo reached for the tie, then tossed it back down. "Is there any chance I can wear the hoodie I like?" Noah crossed his arms. "Not unless you want to be haunted by the ghost of fashion forever." Fair point. The rest of the morning moved like scenes from a story they'd been writing slowly and steadily all year. Jenna moved through the kitchen setting out fruit and finger foods, every motion calm in a way that once felt impossible. Her strength had returned, not just in the way she stood or moved, but in the way she looked at people, like she trusted herself again. Romeo tied the tie wrong 3 times before Noah stepped in with a YouTube tutorial and an expression of deep disappointment. Rusty barked every time someone opened the fridge, convinced each peek was about him. The house had grown along with them. A cozy single story with wide windows, a little garden in the back, and exactly 2 beanbag chairs in the living room that had no business being as comfortable as they were. The walls held a growing collage of family moments, photos, messy art projects. One of Noah's earliest Rusty Tales comic strips, proudly framed between 2 candid Polaroids. Jenna had insisted on keeping the furniture mismatched, calling it lived-in chic, and Romeo had finally stopped suggesting anything that required a design consultant. He'd come to love the chaos. Romeo's new office sat above a bakery downtown, the kind with handwritten chalkboard menus and a line of regulars who didn't care he used to run a billion-dollar company. He spent most of his time working on tech that didn't try to impress anyone, just tools that helped people stay connected, stay organized, or get through hard days with a little more ease. The bakery staff gave him the leftovers at the end of every week, and he'd show up Friday evenings with croissants and still warm cinnamon rolls, greeted like a returning hero. Jenna, now fully in remission, had thrown herself into building something of her own. The initiative started small, just her and a few other parents swapping tips and rides to appointments. But it grew into something meaningful, with grant money and volunteers and evening workshops on everything from budgeting to childcare to breathing through fear. She didn't like to be called a leader, but everyone saw her as one anyway. Romeo helped where he could, but mostly he watched her work with awe. She'd been through the worst and had come out with more fire, not less. And Noah, he was on his 4th published comic strip in the local paper. Rusty Tales had become a surprise hit with readers, especially seniors who sent him letters in the mail asking what Rusty would do next. His stories were simple, often hilarious, and always kind. Romeo kept every copy. Jenna claimed she wasn't sentimental about newsprint, but more than once he'd caught her smoothing out folded pages to tuck into a drawer. By noon, their small backyard had been transformed with folding chairs, a makeshift altar of fairy lights and flower pots, and a dozen friends holding paper fans and plates of lemon bars. Doug stood under a trellis, wearing a Hawaiian shirt covered in pineapples, holding a tablet with the wedding script. He had refused to wear a suit. Jenna had refused to argue. Rusty wore a bow tie and looked deeply betrayed about it. The moment came fast, like it always does. Noah, in a button-up shirt with sleeves slightly too long, stood at the edge of the house and offered his arm with a formality that cracked Jenna's composure. She took it anyway. Her eyes shimmered, but she smiled through it. "Ready?" Noah whispered. "Always." He walked her down the makeshift aisle with a kind of pride that made half the guests cry before anything even started. Romeo stood waiting, hair mostly in place, tie mostly straight. He didn't try to hide the way his hands shook a little. Jenna reached him, slipped her hand into his, and suddenly it didn't matter that nothing had gone exactly to plan. Doug cleared his throat and flipped his tablet upright. "We are gathered here today because they said so, and because I was bribed with a lifetime supply of cinnamon rolls to officiate." Laughter, relief, love wrapped in simplicity. The vows were short. Romeo promised to stay even when things got messy, even when socks ended up in the fridge, even when Rusty snored like a broken leaf blower. Jenna promised not to bolt when life got good, not to hide when it got hard, and to always, always share the remote. Rusty tried to eat a flower petal and was promptly distracted by a treat from someone in the second row. When it ended, When the papers were signed and the cheers rose up into the warm afternoon air, Noah jumped into Romeo's arms without warning. Romeo caught him with a grunt and laughed, the sound full and unguarded. "I thought I was helping you that day at the flea market," Romeo said, voice low enough that only Noah could hear. "Turns out you rescued me." Noah leaned his head on Romeo's shoulder. "Well, yeah, you were clearly a mess." And Romeo, who used to measure his success in percentages and profits, now found himself grateful to be part of something so completely unquantifiable. A family not built on luck or planning, but on choice, on effort, on something resilient enough to grow in the middle of everything else. In the background, Doug raised his cup of lemonade and said to no one in particular, "Told you he was in love with a woman who owns 3 mugs." And in the garden full of folding chairs and laughter and slightly squished cupcakes, Rusty chased a butterfly. The sun stayed just a little too long. And the story that began with a boy selling his best friend for a chance at hope found the kind of ending that didn't feel like an ending at all. If this story touched you, don't forget to like the video. It helps the channel more than you know. Want more heartfelt stories like this? Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Let me know how this one made you feel. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next story.